Vietnam continues to occupy our imaginations because it was such a brutal conflict and lasted so long. Almost everyone has some kind of Vietnam story. This will be ours. Over the next several lectures, I hope to illuminate some of the reasons why Vietnam happened, to talk about the policy and the people who made decisions on Vietnam, to get you to know a little bit about the country, its language, the place of the modern Vietnamese Revolution and its history, and also to understand and maybe even develop some empathy for the people who fought and died in Vietnam. The evidence I'll use to tell this story is from policy documents here in the United States and from archival material in Vietnam. I speak and read Vietnamese, and I've done a number of research trips to Vietnam, and I'll use that expertise to try to shed light on this long and costly war. Vietnam continues to occupy a special place in American history because it's one of the most searing experiences Americans have had since the Civil War. It divided the country, and it threatened to tear this nation apart over purely ideological reasons. Sadly, the scholarship has followed that ideological debate for a number of years. Books written about Vietnam sometimes are an extension of the war itself. It's taken us a long time as a country to understand how sophisticated and nuanced and detailed the history of Vietnam is, and I'm going to try to present some of that in this lecture series. Rather than getting bogged down in minutiae, I will use overarching themes. Even though no single consensus has emerged on Vietnam, there are some things that scholars do generally agree on. I will also point to the controversies still remaining and issues that still need clarification. Overall, we'll have a chronological approach to the war, but we'll be topical and thematic as well. I'll try to introduce as many different voices as I possibly can, trying to be as fair and as open-minded as I can to the different interpretations that exist about Vietnam. We're also going to try to develop an understanding of decision-making in Hanoi, Saigon, and Washington, and place those decisions in a larger geopolitical context. All of this will take place against the backdrop of the people who are actually involved in this conflict. I'll provide biographical sketches of leaders like Ho Chi Minh, Lê Duan, Ngo Dinh Diem, Robert McNamara, Lyndon Johnson, John F. Kennedy, Richard Nixon, Henry Kissinger, and a whole host of others. I'll also try to let you get to know people whose names you may not be familiar with, ordinary Americans and Vietnamese who fought and died in this conflict, and those who protested against it. And I'll also try to give you some understanding of the journalists who covered this conflict. I will do all of that with a mind toward us getting to know a little bit more about the conflict and about its place in American and global history. I'm going to start in a moment our lecture series with a glimpse of Ho Chi Minh and his rise to power and his first interaction with the Americans. But before I do that, let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name's Robert Brigham, and I'm the Shirley Ecker-Bosky Professor of History and International Relations at Vassar College, where I've taught since 1994. I've authored or co-authored 9 books on the Vietnam War, including one with Robert S. McNamara, Kennedy and Johnson's Secretary of Defense. In the 1990s, I worked with a colleague from Brown, Jim Blight, in developing a new strategy called critical oral history. We took people from the Kennedy and Johnson years to Vietnam to relive decision-making with their Vietnamese counterparts. Our goal was to see if we could derive lessons from Vietnam that might be useful to policymakers and others interested in avoiding the mistakes that cost us all so dearly. This project ended in a book called Argument Without End, In Search of Answers to the Tragedy of Vietnam, and the filmmaker Errol Morris used that book as a backdrop for his Academy Award documentary, The Fog of War.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.